Emily and Jack sat together in the departure lounge of Flight 3425 to Bali, holding hands at last. After all the preparations and arrangements, it felt good to finally get through the formalities. Emily closed her eyes, feeling the exhaustion after a late night filled with passion. She really needed this holiday. It was going to be a long year ahead. Yes, 2 weeks of sunshine and intimacy was exactly what they both needed. Jack released her hand for a moment to pull his phone out of his pocket when he suddenly heard a notification sound. "That reminds me, Emily, don't forget to switch your phone to airplane mode," he said. "I left my phone behind," he added without much thought. Jack was distracted as he looked at his phone screen. Emily admired his face until she saw his expression change to something uneasy. "What's wrong?" she asked. Jack nervously passed the phone to her, and she read the message aloud. "Jack, if you dare touch that woman, you will regret it for the rest of your life." "God, Jack, you're a fool. Did you at least warn your wife? She must know," Emily insisted. Jack and Emily scanned the faces around the lounge anxiously. "No way," Emily said. "I packed everything last night while I was still in bed, then put the suitcases straight in the car. She almost wore me out with sex before I finally drifted to sleep. This morning she kissed me goodbye. It can't be her. Someone must have made a mistake." "Jack, it mentions my name," he replied. "Then maybe it's your husband," Emily suggested. "Don't be ridiculous. He has no idea. He thinks I'm just going on a 2-day training course. Besides, how could he know my name and number? We have been unbelievably cautious. Absolutely no one could have found out," Jack insisted firmly. "Who knows about us and whose number is this? I do not recognize anyone. I have some eccentric friends, but I do not think they would want to play a joke on me. Here is an idea. I will call Megan and you call your husband to see if something unusual has happened to them." Emily watched Jack press the speed dial, but there was no answer. He left a message saying that he already missed her. Jack hung up and looked at Emily with confusion. "Are you going to call your husband?" "I did not bring my phone with me, but you can use mine." Emily reached out for Jack's phone, but they both realized how silly this was. For the first time, Emily started to regret her decision. Their further conversation was cut short by the announcement to board the plane. They stood in line together, but holding hands in public no longer felt natural between them. Emily noticed Jack scanning the crowd, searching for familiar faces. She found this somewhat amusing. He kept looking around as they made their way to their seats. Once seated, Emily linked her arm with his and rested her head on his shoulder. "Why did you not bring your phone with you?" Emily smiled and said, "It is all part of my clever plan. You will be proud of me for this. I will show you after we are in the air." About 30 minutes later, the plane reached cruising altitude, and Emily pulled her laptop from her bag. She turned it on and opened a Word document titled, "I have invested in our future. Lover, when my husband goes to bed. Tonight he will discover a letter I left for him. If he disagrees with what I have written, we will lose nothing. But if he agrees, this journey will mark the start of a fresh chapter in our lives together. Here is a copy," she said as she handed the computer to Jack. "My beloved husband, I cherish you and only you, and I have loved you ever since we met 25 years ago. I eagerly anticipate sharing the next 25 years or even longer with you. This has always been my deepest wish and still remains my true desire. My love for you grows stronger each day, and I have joyfully dedicated my life to caring for you and our amazing children. Except for a few visits to friends, I have asked for very little for myself. I know you love me and always want my happiness and fulfillment. Since we love each other, I want to propose an idea to you. I have intentionally presented it in such a way that you have 2 full weeks to ponder my suggestion. If we discuss this face-to-face, there could be a real risk of you reacting sharply and saying something we might not recover from. I simply cannot take that chance. For the same reason, I left my phone behind so you cannot reach me during these 2 weeks. I am not attending a work retreat and no one there knows where I am, so do not waste your efforts trying to contact me. Darling, you are an incredible lover and I never grow weary of your embrace. Still, I miss the excitement of intimate moments with others so much that I am willing to risk your anger by what I do. Before you become too upset, just keep this in perspective. I will be away for 2 weeks with a colleague from work. I have never been unfaithful to you, and without your complete permission, I never will be. I suggest the following with your blessing. I would like to be with other men. I feel that my desires have grown to a level where one man, even one as talented as you, cannot satisfy them completely. It will never be someone you know, and I promise to always maintain discretion. In fact, I will be so discreet that you will not even know when or where unless you want me to. At the very first sign that anyone we know suspects what I am doing, I will stop immediately. You will always have me whenever you want, and nothing about that will change. You are my husband, and your needs will always come first. I want you to be sure that this will not alter how I feel about you or our intimate moments together. In short, it will not impact us in any way whatsoever. Please consider it over the next 2 weeks, darling. If you love me as much as you say, you will eagerly embrace this chance to show it. I know how deeply you care for me, and that knowledge will comfort me every night as I fall asleep while I am away. So I trust that you will pamper me now, my dear. Please think it over for the next 2 weeks. If your answer is no, I will respect your wish and would welcome the chance to discuss it further. I will try not to take offense at the names you call me or your implied doubts. If your answer is yes, all you need to do is say the answer is yes, and we will not have to discuss it again, although I would be willing if you want to. Your devoted wife, Emily. Jack finished reading and simply remarked, "Wow, that is impressive, isn't it?" I must admit that I borrowed many of the phrases from a story I found on an erotic fiction site written by a guy named Biggie33 titled We Need to Talk. Why did you call the letter an investment in our future? Don't you realize I asked my husband for permission to have intimacy outside our marriage? If he agrees, then when we return, we can move forward without any guilt. Emily thought to herself, well, I can manage 2 weeks with you and then be certain I do not need you anymore, but your replacement, that is a completely different matter. You are so confident he will accept? Of course, I gave the impression he had a choice, but that is only so he can convince himself he remains in control. If he dares to refuse, we will have to keep hiding like before. So what do you think of that? Quite firm and sensible. However, it is a choice he will never make based on reason. I hope he is not a true man because that would be somewhat insulting. What? There is no way he was upset by anything in that letter. It took me several days to get it just right. Yes, but you must understand that you could spend an entire year and still risk hurting his feelings. As a woman, you can never truly grasp how a man's mind works. The main thing I gathered from that letter is he can no longer fulfill you. No matter how skilled he is, he never will. You should understand, Emily, that every man feels somewhat uneasy about his work. The idea of losing you to someone who might be larger or better only intensifies that unease. Honestly, Emily, I can only imagine two possible reactions from him after reading this. One is to surrender and accept the situation, and the other is to respond aggressively. I believe you are mistaken. I know my husband well. He will value my honesty and consider it seriously. If I ask him before taking any action, it will be completely without risk. Jack looked at his future partner and reflected on how much he trusted her self-deception. He was already viewing her differently. Certainly, she was twisting the truth to gain approval from her spouse, yet Emily's blatant falsehoods and the way she manipulated Jack were disturbing. A mix of sincere curiosity and a mischievous streak prompted him to ask another question. How did the story about the big guy end for Emily? Did she manage to enjoy herself freely? He received his answer even before she spoke. Her expression turned somber. No, her husband had thrown her out. This was meant to divert her from doubts about whether her actions were right. Jack quickly shifted the topic. After all the effort and cost of this journey, the last thing he wanted was for her to wake up and truly follow what the letter suggested. An innocent trip you did not tell me about? I did not mention the strange man I noticed at international registration, did I? He was standing about 25 meters away from me while I was waiting in line. When he noticed me staring, he simply locked eyes with me and traced his index finger down my throat in a sharp, slapping motion. I glanced around to check if he was doing that to someone else behind me, but there was no one there. It felt unsettling. Emily asked casually, "Yes, what did he look like?" The world is filled with odd, disturbed individuals, that's the reality. Emily, he seemed like an ordinary man, over 6 feet tall with dark hair and a goatee. Jack paused just then as Emily suddenly sat upright and reopened her laptop. After starting it, she accessed several files and displayed a picture of herself with a man standing in front of a house. With a trembling voice filled with concern, she inquired, "Is that him? Could it be?" Jack responded, "Emily, it definitely resembles him a lot, but I cannot be certain." Emily stared closely at Jack, wondering if he had any reason to deceive her. Was he scared that if she confirmed her husband had uncovered their secret, she would be unreachable to him for the next 2 weeks? For the first time, Emily realized Jack was a man who might cheat on his wife and hence was fundamentally untrustworthy. What was that guy wearing, Jack? That's a woman's question, Emily. Guys usually do not pay attention to what others are wearing. Didn't you say he dropped you off at the domestic terminal? Yes, that's right. I persuaded him to leave me there and go. After I saw him leave, I took a bus to the international terminal so he would have to return to his car, then drive to the international terminal and park. Discovering who to focus on in the check-in queue seems quite doubtful, Emily thought. It was more probable that it was just some random maniac. He was aware he needed to divert Emily's attention, who appeared far from convinced about the house shown in the picture. Emily, who also enjoyed a distraction and was used to receiving compliments about her home, responded automatically. Yes, it is lovely, isn't it? We had purchased a piece of land by the beach as an investment. It is very steep and narrow, and you wouldn't imagine the house is portable. It took my husband nearly 15 years, but he kept improving it endlessly and landscaping around it. You should see the interior. He is an artist, and every room has murals with specific themes. The bathrooms and living room display a nautical style, while the study has a business vibe. When you step into the study, the atmosphere clearly encourages work, and indeed you do work there. I won't disclose the bedroom's theme because we have received numerous awards for the interior design and efficient land use. There is even a creek flowing beneath the house. Their conversation shifted to their families, a topic they had barely touched on in their relationship so far. They discussed Jack's 2 children aged 6 and 8. Emily shared about her 3 kids, Sarah, who was 23, recently graduated from law school and now working as a real estate lawyer, as well as the 2 younger ones still living at home, Daniel, who was 16, and Larry, who was 13. Emily had no idea, but she was trying hard to distract herself from the deeper thoughts that had begun to creep in. Once she managed to succeed, she reached for a notepad and jotted down lawyer home along with children, uncertain if her husband was trailing her. She could not form any concrete plans around him, aware that she needed to safeguard both her home and family. After a heavy silence fell over the couple, Emily started reprimanding herself for acting as a coward, failing to consider her own situation or the potential circumstances she might face. She carefully reconstructed the sequence of events. On Thursday night, she packed her belongings, making sure to exclude anything unrelated to business or unnecessary for the weekend. Between attending 2 weekly courses, she intended to purchase bikinis and some intimate clothing and travel to Bali later that evening. Her husband behaved normally, and they were intimate on Friday. She went to her workplace at her usual time. They had planned to do significant work on her company car, so she arranged for Jack to pick her up that afternoon. He waited in the reception area while she finished packing and then took her home. The two shared lunch with their children, drove them to their grandparents' house, and later made love late into the night. Emily felt especially passionate, fueled by both her anticipation of the upcoming night and Jack's obliviousness. On Saturday morning, she woke early to go to the airport. She recalled how anxious she had been when she suggested Jack simply take her bags to the check-in counter and leave. Previously, he had stayed until the plane had departed, so she felt relief when he quickly agreed. She had watched him carefully until the plane was out of sight. He waited in the parking lot for his car to pull away, his impatience to leave deepening into something darker. She compared his behavior from last night and today to her own careful planning. Absolutely no one from her workplace was aware of anything except that she had taken annual leave, and her husband did not know anyone from her job either. He could not possibly be aware of her true intentions. The message that appeared on Jack's phone turned out to be a prank from a friend. The man eyeing him near the check-in desk was just a random lunatic. Calm down, Emily, she told herself, questioning what consequences might follow if he discovered she had lied about where she was going. According to the letter, she appeared to be traveling with a friend from work, but did not clarify whether it was a man or a woman. She did not notice that her eyes had closed until they opened again. She imagined her husband knowing her exact destination at the airport and realized how suspicious that would seem to him. The deception would look like she had slipped away deliberately to hide the truth. That itself was serious, but, with careful argument, could be defended. However, in light of the letter's contents, there could be no doubt that Emily used the remainder of the flight to cover her tracks as best she could. Her top priority was to destroy the letter hidden under a pillow 2,500 kilometers from her home, Secondly, she had to convince herself that she was worrying too much over nothing. Emily was always prepared to foresee every possibility. She had written a lengthy letter to Megan, understanding that she had not been able to send it before leaving for Bali, so she implored her daughter to visit her home and complete two tasks. The first task was to take control of her phone and change the number to Jack's. She explained that she felt too ashamed to admit she had forgotten it and had bought a prepaid phone specifically for the trip. The second was to retrieve a letter tucked beneath her father's pillow. She pleaded with her daughter not to read it because it was an intensely private message exchanged between husband and wife. The mother and daughter shared a tight bond, so she trusted her completely, not only to follow the instructions but also to keep everything confidential. Additionally, Emily requested Sarah to confirm that she had received the letter and to inform her once she had fulfilled the tasks assigned. Once Jack and Emily landed at Denpasar Airport, Emily sent an email, then, assuming her husband would avoid checking the caller ID, called him from Jack's phone. However, none of her calls were returned during that time or throughout the hour it took to clear customs and reach the hotel. This was unprecedented, sparking alarm bells in her mind. Shortly before the taxi arrived at the hotel, Sarah called Jack's phone to confirm she had done what was asked. Emily managed to evade some questions about the situation, but when Sarah was asked if her father was okay, her response shocked Emily. Her father had called to say he needed time to think and that he was leaving with someone else. The children headed to his countryside cabin. Emily planned to join them that evening. Jack's wife asked what his plans for the weekend were, yet his reply did not mention the cabin at all. Worse still, the cabin was completely cut off from all modern communication technologies. Emily felt so puzzled that she allowed her daughter to make the call without raising any further questions. Jack had just prepared a barbecue dinner for his 3 children at the cottage. They desperately pleaded with him to take them camping to fetch ingredients for their beloved campfire stew the next day. Since her arrival, Sarah noticed that her father seemed distracted but chose not to question him. During a family meeting, Sarah began the discussion asking, "Is it because of Mom, Dad?" Her siblings agreed, explaining that she had been acting strangely for months, emotionally distant. Yesterday and this morning, Sarah learned unsettling information. The fear that filled the room only grew deeper when Jack sighed heavily before continuing. They knew him as a cheerful, strong man who rarely showed seriousness. Waiting for him to speak, he finally revealed, "Your mom told me she is going overseas for a 2-week course related to work." All 3 children said that was exactly what she had told them the day before. Jack added, "This afternoon she asked me to pick her up from work, so I did. I saw her through the office window speaking with a man inside. The way they stood and looked at each other gave me a strange feeling. Something off. She did not come out for more than 5 minutes, so I wandered around the reception area. On one of the walls, there was a collection of photographs featuring all the top executives in the company. I recognized the man she had been speaking with. His name is Jack. I had even picked up his business card at the front desk earlier this morning. Unable to sleep, I went downstairs. I must admit I felt a little guilty, but I ended up looking inside your mother's purse. There, I found her passport, and upon examining it closely, I discovered a visa stamp for Indonesia dated 3 weeks ago. I recalled seeing her reading a travel brochure about Bali last month." Their father paused and scanned the room, clearly weighing his words carefully. "Bali is part of Indonesia and is not a domestic location. It is overseas." He added that he had not mentioned anything to your mother because accusing someone of infidelity without concrete evidence is a serious matter, especially when it concerns someone you love unconditionally. Sarah interrupted, reminding him they had been raised on the values their parents taught them. Never cheat, never lie. Always treat others with respect until it is lost, then simply walk away quietly. That is why what happened earlier this morning is so difficult to comprehend and discuss. The mood in the room grew heavier as they allowed my father all the time he needed to collect his thoughts and figure out how to address the situation. This morning, your mother asked me to drop her off at the domestic terminal and leave. She mentioned feeling anxious about leaving you alone at home for an extended period. Intentionally, I agreed and drove directly to the international terminal. I waited close to the check-in counter for flights to Bali and noticed Mr. Jack arriving to check in. I concealed myself and continued observing. About 15 minutes later, your mother appeared and checked in as well. I was too shocked to confront her. "Do you think, yes, Sarah, I suspect your mother deceived me, in fact all of us, and went to Bali to have an affair with someone she works with." Your father looked away, but It was clear to his 3 children that he was deeply hurt. They had never seen their strong father cry, and they were ready to pay almost anything just to spare him from showing such pain. One by one, beginning with Daniel, they surrounded their father with a hug. Sarah once again took the lead. She asked him what he planned to do. Daddy responded that he was uncertain. "Kids," he said, "if she ever sleeps with another man, everything will be over. Trust is the foundation of marriage, and any betrayal is unforgivable. If she has not slept with that man, I still don't know if I can survive her cheating." For now, he had only sent them a message warning that if they touched each other, there would be serious consequences. This allowed him to delay making a decision until he had time to think. Does that make sense? Sarah nodded to everyone and then revealed something he did not know. "Mom left her phone at home, Dad. She would not have received your message. I know how to contact her. Should I tell her to leave that man?" Sarah was alone. I want her to respond for her own reasons. A choice made out of fear of the repercussions is not really a choice at all. She must have the proper motivation. What number did she give you to reach her? Sarah took out her phone and opened the lengthy letter from Emily. She read the initial 6 digits to her father, and he shared the last 4 from a business card he had taken from his pocket. Through this simple act, all 4 individuals in the room became certain of the complete truth of his account. Silence followed. "That is not everything. Daddy, Mom asked me to retrieve a letter for you from beneath the pillow at home," she said. She reached into her bag, pulled out the controversial letter, and extended it to him. Everyone waited for him to read it. He hesitated to read aloud, but once he understood its contents, young Jack interrupted. "Dad, this letter concerns our family. We have always made the major decisions together. You must explain this to us." Dave glanced at his youngest son and felt more pride than ever before. Here he was, surrounded by his siblings amid the most serious challenge their family had ever encountered, and Jack was managing it better than Dave himself. They were all holding up. They embraced again before Dave began reading. He went over the letter 3 times, the second reading emphasizing the 3rd paragraph. Without that paragraph, it would have been a perfectly reasonable request from a wife to her husband and, on the surface, a completely mature proposition. However, one sentence in the 3rd paragraph cast doubt over the entire message. "I am leaving for 2 weeks with a colleague from work. I have never been unfaithful to you, and I never will be without your complete approval." One single proven lie made the rest of the message questionable or simply incorrect. A lengthy and mature discussion followed in which their mother and wife assessed intentions that were surprisingly close to reality. When other options were dismissed, a clear conclusion was drawn, and a plan of action was decided. Depending on the response to a single question, their mother might no longer deserve to be part of their family. Jack did his best to defend the absent person. "Listen, children, if any wrongdoing happened, it was against me. As your mother's husband, you should not allow it to change your feelings towards her." Once again, little Larry spoke for everyone. "No, Dad, the moment she deceived all of us, she excluded herself." Jack stared at his son, and seeing the determined chin and serious gaze, he understood the child had inherited traits very similar to his own. Chapter 3, Emily shocked Jack at the hotel front desk by requesting a private room on a different floor. She had reserved it for 2 days with the possibility to extend, and asked to have priority booking if the hotel were fully booked. Jack checked in and looked at Emily with curiosity. She told him to consider it, go to his room, settle in, and meet her in the lobby in 2 hours. After a few hours, he awkwardly agreed to meet. At the scheduled time, Jack didn't hesitate for a moment, but when he noticed what Emily was wearing, he thought he would definitely enjoy being close to her. They had been close for almost a month, yet nothing beyond kissing and touching had happened. "What's going on, Emily?" "Think about it, Jack. We planned to come here together, and then you get a message on your phone addressed specifically to you, warning that if you lay a finger on this woman, you will regret it forever. This message arrived right after a man resembling her husband made a threatening gesture towards him. Are you following me? We drove here, and my daughter told me that my husband has been acting completely out of character for the last 3 hours. He has not answered my calls, which is very unusual for him." Jack was not naive. He grasped what all this might imply, but he did not see how it concerned him in any way. "I believe there is about an 80% chance my husband knows we are here together. Don't ask me how he found out because I genuinely have no clue. I am absolutely certain that if he discovers we slept together, My marriage will be finished. A cost I am unwilling to bear. If I were completely sure that he knew, I would already be on a plane home. Now, if he does not know, how on earth can I justify coming back so soon without telling a blatant lie? We have been married for 25 years, and he would spot a lie immediately if he were suspicious. I'm sorry, Jack, but we are not meant to go further. Sleeping together until I find my husband, I talked on the phone, trying to convince myself that he knew nothing. Jack appeared clearly upset by what I said. Emily sensed he was about to argue, so she dismissed him with a wave. Jack, if you were my husband and suspected I had gone on a date with someone else, how would you react? Without hesitation, I would hire a private detective and gather evidence. Emily noticed that reason was finally breaking through the fog of desire clouding his mind. She remained frustrated because the gravity of her situation was still not sinking into his thick skull. Did you attempt to call your wife again after you got there? That question grabbed his attention immediately. Jack scanned the dark corners of the hallway to spot any hidden cameras. Right now, you understand. Tonight and tomorrow, I will sleep alone in my room. When my husband returns from work and can call me, we'll resolve this. Until then, do not come to my room. Do not approach me unless we're in a public place. Do not touch me. If my husband tries to call, do not answer. Send it straight to voicemail. Find me as quickly as possible. These are the numbers he will be dialing from now on. Give me a friendly kiss on the cheek and we will part ways. Jack followed the instructions, and then both retreated to their rooms, each cautiously checking for surveillance. If either had bothered to check the phone number from which Jack's threat had come, they might have realized that Emily was already 80%, no, completely a victim. She just had not fully accepted it yet. Chapter 4 unfolded after 4 days had elapsed. The eagerly anticipated journey had not proceeded according to their expectations. They were meant to dine at the hotel's restaurant and maintain complete physical distance. Emily pulled Jack protesting, leading him through countless clothing shops to find new clothes. They even embarked on a day excursion together on Tuesday. If someone was shadowing them, it had to be experts. Emily insisted on spending every moment together in case Dave attempted contact. On Monday, Emily purchased a discarded cell phone and had Jack practice switching to it in case he received a call. Her anxiety only rose slightly as the school break began. There was a chance Dave had taken Danielle and Larry to the cabin for more than just one weekend. Still, Sarah's lack of response to emails was troubling. Jack resisted until Tuesday evening when he went to bed early, reserved an extra room, left his room carefully ensuring no one trailed him, and then spent the entire night with one of the imported Javanese courtesans. On Wednesday, Emily's worry became so intense she remained confined to her room all day, conducting online research about divorce. She then wrote to their family lawyer, seeking confirmation of her assumptions regarding a possible divorce outcome. This attorney managed all personal legal affairs for the family. While he admitted it was not within his specialization, he agreed with her conclusions. 3 times daily, Dave and Sarah made phone calls went mostly unanswered, about 80%, and her emotional detachment from everyone was nearing 90%. She realized she was lonelier than she had ever been in her entire life. Desperate, she sent an email to Sarah, pleading for her to get in touch with Dave. When no reply came by Friday, Emily made a decision to protect her future. She consulted her lawyer, who held all the necessary authorizations to secure the family finances. Emily transferred the ownership of the last remaining vacant plot of land into a trust with Sarah and herself, named as trustees. Either trustee could access the trust, but for the majority of the family's assets, she divided them into 2 separate trusts for the minor children. Both trusts had 2 trustees, but this time joint approval was mandatory for any action. One trustee had to be the child, and the other she intended to be herself. However, the lawyer convinced her to appoint him as the child's legal guardian instead, explaining that it would provide greater security. He reassured her that the child's consent was irrelevant until they reached 18 years of age. Confident that she would control the finances if the worst occurred, and knowing the changes could be reversed if the crisis proved false, Emily finally rested better than she had in days. Then on Saturday, within the span of 1 hour, 2 shocking events unfolded. The first arrived with Jack, who came to her room despite her wishes, worried because his wife was not responding, and he had asked his brother to join him. The brother reported that he had done so. Jack's wife asked him where his brother wanted the divorce papers delivered. She called him at work and discovered that he was not away on a business trip, but was actually on annual leave. Well, that explained how Dave learned about it. Jack immediately flew home to try to handle the consequences. Emily quickly reached out to her lawyer and had him approve all the changes, accompanied Jack to the airport, and moved into his former room. The second blow was nearer to home and much more damaging. She chose to inspect the Facebook accounts of the two younger children. Nothing had appeared there since she left. No clues about what they had been doing, and no replies to requests to contact her or even acknowledge her existence. This time there was a fresh message on Larry's account announcing to everyone that his mother and father were getting a divorce. Emily shouted loudly in an empty room far from her family, wondering what on earth Dave was doing. The revelation of the divorce was followed by countless discussions, disagreements, and attempts at explaining, sometimes even humiliation. The children knew that she was the main breadwinner and worked tirelessly. It was only natural since Dave had dropped out after high school and kept her in college. Of course, this meant Dave was the dominant influence in their children's lives, but this nonsense had crossed the line. She prayed, offering her hopes to any god who might listen, wishing she would start noticing the signs sooner. Jack's schemes had to be stopped before they could come to full fruition. If that did not happen, Dave would soon possess an undeniable private investigator's report proving that nothing had occurred. Now that Jack was no longer around, it seemed nothing would change. As Emily calmed down, she started to think clearly. When no one was communicating with her, she employed her sharp mind to objectively understand what Dave was perceiving. She made some informed assumptions. Someone must have discovered her trip to Bali. That someone could not be Dave because the only proof of the plan was stored on their home computer, and Dave lacked computer skills. This third party, likely Jack's wife, had probably informed Dave, possibly as early as the morning of the flight. All Dave could have known was that Emily had lied about the destination and was traveling with Jack unless Sarah had disregarded instructions not to read the letter or shared its contents with her father. Emily quickly retrieved the letter and examined it wide awake. It took 3 tries, each time accompanied by a racing heartbeat. The letter began with a straightforward presentation of facts without any questions, followed by clear preparation to distort the truth while maintaining some facts. Then it included a mixture of truth and outright lies. Now Dave could be aware. Jack was an exceptional lover, but Emily felt exhausted being in his embrace. This was clear to her, and if he had seen the letter, obvious to him as well. His private investigator's report would confirm that having a friend present was having a male companion without her husband's knowledge was inappropriate. In the stark clarity of a reason, she understood that if he had sent her that note filled with a blatant falsehood, every other detail would instantly become questionable. As a result, her promises of loyalty would lose their value. Returning to the start, her claim that he was an amazing lover would also fall under doubt. Suddenly, she grasped the core issue. Jack was correct. She had challenged Dave's entire belief that he was fulfilling her desires. His pride would suffer greatly, yet she had not been unfaithful. The private investigator's findings should at least verify that nothing improper occurred during this particular trip. Naturally, he might suspect an affair began even before traveling, but Emily already possessed a strategy to counter such assumptions. When did the detective begin his surveillance? If it started from the moment they checked into the hotel, then the idea of a private room was pointless. Emily thought there were too many uncertainties. The fourth paragraph, once appearing so warm and thoughtful when she wrote it, now felt like pure deception, empty nonsense. The entire letter in hindsight was revealed to be a total fabrication. Emily truly hoped Jack had not seen it. In conclusion, if he had not come across the note, she still faced considerable work to fix matters. If he had, she suspected things would become far more complicated. No amount of deception would help at all. The irony of the situation nearly made Emily smile. Her only lifeline right now was the private investigator's report confirming that nothing had occurred in Bali. Emily hoped the investigator was competent and found some relief in the fact that he was so effective she hadn't even noticed his presence. Knowing he was there, she mentally scolded herself. Why had she acted that way? After a whole night is spent pondering under the influence of alcohol, Emily concluded she fit the stereotype of a wife who seemingly had everything but envisioned a future unlike her past and resented it. A thriving spouse and an ambitious businesswoman, she had spent her whole professional life hiding, deceiving, exploring every possible option, and even cheating. She was a woman nearing menopause, craving something she needed to satisfy. Then, she trusted her cleverness and Jack's innocence to scratch that itch without paying the price. The bitter irony no longer amused her. Emily realized she might soon become not only a successful businesswoman, but also a divorced one, still unable to quell that nagging desire. The following morning, with no hope of finding answers there, Emily chose to return home immediately. First, she decided to use her negotiation skills to postpone any irreversible decisions. She composed a letter to David via Sarah, keeping it deliberately vague since she was uncertain whether Sarah had already shared the letter with her father. Emily's plan, if she had even glanced at it, was to try and avoid the divorce but rely on the belief that she would come out ahead in the worst-case scenario since she was the type of person who anticipated every possible outcome. She found counselors in her town and scheduled an appointment online with the one she selected. Then she got dressed for the day tour she had reserved 4 days earlier, knowing she still had enough time to call the airline. Chapter 5. Sarah enters her father's house and catches the tail end of a conversation between him and his neighbor. "So besides warning Peter's wife about your doubts, what else did you do, Dave?" "Nothing." "Hi, Sarah. You know John Smith from next door, right? He's a lawyer, too. He generously offered to give me some advice." "Oh, come on, Dave. After all the landscaping tips and help you've provided over the years, not to mention all the tools you lent me, this is the least I could do," John said. "Hi, Sarah. Hey, John, are you here to assist Daddy with his divorce?" Well, who's talking divorce? All we know for sure so far is that your mother lied to us and is spending 2 weeks in Bali with someone. I, for one, will wait to hear what she has to say before deciding on the divorce." "Please excuse my absent-minded father. John, he can be quite gullible at times. Yesterday, Mom's lawyer called me in to sign a trust agreement that effectively removes Dad's control of some family assets." Then we continue. All the bank and investment accounts were checked, and it appeared that most of the funds had vanished. "Somewhere she is trying her hardest to protect you, Dad. Admit it. Now this situation finally exposes her true nature." Emily handed her father 2 pages from a printed letter. He read through them and then passed them on to Jack. "Dear Emily, could you please print the attached document and deliver it to your father? Again, I trust your judgment not to read it because it contains private matters between Jack and me. Dear David, I suppose you have already realized that I was not truthful about the reason and destination of my trip this week. When I return, we will discuss this, and I hope you will accept my apology for the grave mistake I made. I ask for the same patience you have always shown. Just know 2 things, and please do not take any action until we speak. 1. I love you and only you, always have and always will. 2. Ever since we became exclusive all these years ago, I have been faithful to you. I have never been intimate with anyone else. I understand that my recent behavior has made you doubt this, and I am willing to do whatever it takes to prove this truth. I suggest a lie detector test upon my return, hopefully in about 1 day. I am more than willing to stop and take the test on the way back from the airport if you can arrange it. You may provide the questions and ask anything you want. After this major issue is resolved, in the room I want to express my sincere apologies for any disrespect you might feel I have shown. Please, I beg you, do not act impulsively. We both understand the consequences a divorce would bring. You would lose the home you have poured your heart into and also half of the funds we intended to use for our early retirement. Think about the children. Divorce always splits families apart, and if you ask around, the mother almost always gains custody. Having Sarah and Danielle on my side is almost certain. It would be heartbreaking if divorce created a divide between them and Larry. I know your love for the kids is deep, and we both realize how painful it would be not to see them whenever you wish. So please wait until you allow me the chance to explain. See you soon, your loving wife, Emily." Jack finished reading the letter. If it were not for what we know she was doing behind the scenes, it would have been truly moving and emotionally convincing material. "What do you mean?" John asked. "Dave, you have to understand that in my line of work, I encounter all kinds of schemes. This one is quite typical. Your wife decides she wants out of the marriage, searches for a replacement, finds one, and then uses a 2-week vacation to test him out. I believe it's called an affair on the road. Usually, if she concludes he is the one, she quietly removes all assets out of your reach and files for divorce shortly after. The really clever ones then corrupt the innocent relationship between parents and children first, just like Emily began doing with Sarah through her writings. A letter that depicts you as weak, Emily was allowed to discover one of the most cunning tactics I have ever witnessed. The smartest strategy to win a divorce is to deliver a devastating blow to your partner, cutting off their access to solid advice that could help them. Then, leave them penniless and compel your children to make a choice between their parents. In this situation, the decision will fall between a mother's stability in the family home and a financially ruined father living in a poor area. Surely there must be an alternative explanation. I can prove it. Contact 3 of the most reputable divorce lawyers in town. The one or those who refuse to take your case are probably already representing her. I expect she paid all 3 up front to keep you out. If you go broke and hire a better attorney, this bluff will have a better chance of succeeding. What is this bluff exactly? The whole letter is a bluff. Jack, her attorney must have already informed her that winning custody of children your age is not as straightforward as before, especially since you might be seen as the primary caretaker. Jack, this letter's main purpose is to get you to stop acting while she finishes preparing her surprise move. Her problem is that you uncovered her plan before it was fully developed. Once her strategy is set in stone, she will want to finalize the divorce as quickly as possible, definitely before Larry becomes old enough to choose which home to live in. You can expect her to force you into counseling. In this country, the courts will only grant a divorce if you have lived separately for 12 months or if a counselor declares the marriage beyond repair. Expect her to choose a counselor and try to intimidate you through threats at the end. It is quite common nowadays for women to initiate divorce. Jack excused himself by asking Emily who the top divorce lawyer in the area was. Jack called, gave the name, and requested a meeting but was told the firm could not take on his case. He did not realize that the best attorney in town was overwhelmed with cases and had instructed the secretary not to accept new clients yet. Jack then returned to the break room. All right, Emily, I trust your judgment. What is the next step? First, you must authorize me to block all finances not already in Megan's control. Then you limit her access to any other shared funds. How do I do that? Start by canceling every credit card under joint ownership. Okay, but I still feel uneasy. She's so persuasive when she says she still loves me, but that conflicts with the threats in the second half of the letter. Dad, are you sure Mom lied to you? Yes, absolutely. Sarah, do you ever lie to those you love? No, I don't. What did you always tell us are the 3 foundations of a successful relationship? Love, trust, and respect, right? How many of those do you have left? Only 1, now that you mention it. And how much is Mom showing you of those? None. Now, when Emily went to pay a fine for changing her flight date, her 2 credit cards declined her payment. She hurried to an ATM she had used before but was denied access. Then she switched into urgent problem-solving mode. Her hotel and meals had already been paid in advance, so she would neither starve nor be evicted from her room. She still had a few hundred in traveler's checks just in case, though it was clearly not enough since no friends were around to lend her money. The only option left was her parents, but asking them to send funds would raise questions she was not ready to answer right now. Quickly, she emailed her lawyer demanding an explanation about the status of her bank accounts, then braced herself for a dull week with no spending before her planned departure. She wondered how her straightforward and supposedly fail-safe plan to satisfy a simple urge could suddenly threaten Jack's entire situation. She knew Jack would never forgive betrayal and had taken this risk consciously knowing the near impossibility of being discovered. What could have pushed him toward such a reckless move? She suspected she might have had an affair with another man and Jack must have left knowing nothing had happened. Jack had no idea about her financial tricks, nor did he know their financial attorney's identity. He had always trusted her to manage those affairs. While she quietly banged her head on the bedroom wall, 2 emails arrived only to deepen her despair. The first one came from Jack's wife, Megan, expressing gratitude for destroying her marriage. Endangering her children's safe future might have caused her deep pain if the second letter had not arrived while she was still trying to come to terms with the first. Initially, it appeared to be one of her own notes addressed to Jack, sent 2 weeks earlier and anticipating her trip. Both his and her addresses were visible in the header, so the letter was redirected back to her with a simple question attached. Why did you deceive us? The letter was signed by Danielle. Though her husband struggled with technology, her children were not naive. It dawned on her that Dave was neither the only person misled by her dishonesty, nor the sole sufferer of her punishment. She also recognized that the note left Sarah's lack of response in a new and troubling perspective. Emily wept over her grief and disappointment and then wrote back to Danielle, saying she would clarify the misunderstanding once she returned home. Megan must have anticipated this because the reply arrived instantly. It was peculiar, the letter stated, that she chose to spend the school break with another man instead of being with Jack and all of them. Emily cried once more. That week was overwhelmingly busy and dull, with a very limited budget, so there was little to do but lie on the sandy shore. After packing a towel, she stayed for 1 hour before leaving the beach and returning to the hotel. She understood that coming back with a lovely tan would simply confirm everyone's suspicions of dishonesty. Frustrated, she composed a lengthy letter to send home. The message came through Emily without much explanation. It referred to mistakes and criticism directed at her. Part of being undervalued as a wife, mother, and main provider, it even touched on her self-esteem in a "that is my justification" kind of way. The letter mentioned twice that she had never been with anyone except Dave during their entire marriage. It once again advised her not to take any drastic steps before having a chance to talk things over. There was nothing resembling an apology in the letter. It was not the tone of a confident businesswoman who understood she was in a strong position. After hitting the send button, she sat quietly waiting. Chapter 7. Now, kids, it is time to have a serious conversation about what we will do when your mom gets back. I'm a bit surprised that she chose to stay there. And unless we receive different information, we have to assume she will return on Friday as planned. How should we handle this? Remember, all we know is that she intended to leave with a man from her workplace. We do not know if this is the first time she has been dishonest with us. Sarah, you go first. Well, I only had to read her most recent letter. Dad, it shows she is just a spoiled individual who treats us like minor annoyances to be ignored. In my view, the fact that she cheated on us the first time does not matter. She had a choice. Take her yearly vacation and spend it with her family, or use it to disappear with someone else. She already spends very little time with Danielle and Larry, considering her schedule. Due to long working hours and frequent business trips, I believe her behavior both before and after being discovered shows a lack of respect toward all of us and feels dishonest. If she does not change her approach to this situation, I will be finished with her. Sarah was firm but just with her judgment and then asked Danielle for her opinion. Danielle responded that she thought Emily simply did not understand. Daddy agreed, saying, "When we hear from Jack, I will explain what I plan to do." Jack replied, "I do not mind, Dad. As long as I am with you, I will do everything I can to help make it happen." Then the father invited Jack to share his idea. Dad continued, "I think somehow your mother lost her way for a time. I am unsure if the promotion she received last year caused a shift in her. Kids, I hope you support me. I believe if she admits what she did and shows genuine regret, we should consider giving her another chance. What do you think, Sarah?" She looked at her younger siblings and sensed they agreed. Little children need stability until they reach a rebellious age when they reject all their parents' beliefs and want to change the world. "That is true, Dad," they said. "We will try, but have you seen her latest letter? I have read it 16 times and detect no remorse at all. Surprisingly, I believed her when she wrote she had never been unfaithful to you." "I agree, Sarah, which is why I have planned a little surprise for her. When she faces it, she will understand that we are convinced she has betrayed the family. I do not think she realizes how deeply hurt we are, which is why she focuses on the physical impact will come after we manage to make her understand our emotions. The million-dollar question is how she will respond. If she breaks down and apologizes to all of us, we will discuss it further. But if she does not, then we will figure out the next steps. That is my perspective." Chapter 8. The return letter caught Emily off guard. It was sent by Sarah but addressed to Jack and all 3 children. The letter outlined the schedule for her return. After reading it, a wave of dread washed over her, as if she had failed in her mission. She was expected to come back late on Friday night. The letter mentioned she had an appointment with a polygraph examiner, and that all 4 rebels would undergo questioning. After the test, she was to stay at a motel for 2 nights to reflect on her responses. At any time on Saturday afternoon, she could request a meeting to discuss the future of the family. Emily felt resentful about being controlled, yet for now she chose to go along with their little arrangement. One thing was clear: the moment she swallowed her pride, she was in for a harsh confrontation. People needed to be reminded who was in charge. Feeling somewhat reassured, she relaxed a bit. She was relieved her suggestion of a lie detector had been accepted. It was the surest way to prove to Jack she had kept her promise. She knew that if she convinced Jack, the rest would follow. What questions would he ask? He was already aware of her conduct in Bali, that was certain. The primary question would be whether she had any involvement with Jack. Before going to Bali, if he posed the straightforward question, "Have you been intimate with Jack or anyone besides your spouse?" she would remain at home. She feared he might then pose subtler inquiries like, "Have you always acted as a devoted wife should?" which would put her on a more unstable footing. She had not been with Jack in the strict Clintonian sense of the word. Then there was Michael before Jack. They had not been involved either, but only because Michael had backed out at the very last moment. Emily understood it was a mistake to overthink the questions. She was aware that lie detectors measured signs like heart rate and perspiration, so by taking the questions literally, she risked elevating her anxiety and triggering a false positive response. Nonetheless, she rehearsed answers to her simple-minded spouse's implied queries. Generally composed, she arrived at the airport at the scheduled hour. She purposely did not inform anyone about her arrival time, pretending that everyone would be preoccupied with work or school. She insisted on taking a taxi since the family could not be waiting in the domestic terminal. Upon reaching the international terminal and stepping out of customs, she found herself unable to avoid comparing how she had actually arrived to how she had imagined it. Instead of arriving quietly and content, she came holding a begging bowl. After the cab ride, she stayed in the polygraph waiting area for a full hour until one of the technicians guided Emily into the room and explained the general steps of the procedure. The pre-test questions were designed to adjust the equipment according to her physiological responses. Then the technician took out a folder and frowned. "Oh yes, this is the one." Emily felt a slight blush, aware of the sensitive nature of the questions and realizing the operator would soon uncover her recent past. "Mrs. Brown, the questions I have for you are somewhat unusual. Instead of the common list format, they come as a flowchart." "Ah, yes, I have encountered that a couple of times before," she replied. "There is a starting question, and depending on the answer, the next question changes accordingly. It makes the process slower, but does not compromise the accuracy of the results, I assure you. Are you prepared?" "As I always am," she answered confidently. The operator went through the 8 calibration questions, then paused, opened the file again, and read aloud. Question number 2. 2 weeks ago, you traveled to Bali, intending to engage in extramarital relations with Mr. Jack. "Oh, yes," she replied calmly. The operator observed the polygraph signals and took notes, then consulted the file once again. Emily expected this type of question and prepared herself for what would come next. Would the next query ask if she actually had relations with Jack in Bali or whether she had been intimate with him prior to the trip? She fervently hoped the question would be framed in a way that allowed her a credible denial to the simple question, "Did you have sex?" With Jack, she could only respond with a no and walk on, by "Please keep it simple." The technician closed the file and began removing the paper from the machine. "Thank you, Mrs. Brown. I have an email address to send the report to you." It would be an enormous understatement to say Emily was shocked. What on earth does that mean? Just one question? Yeah, a strange one. I have seen this only once before. And I know that man was trying to make his point clear. "I think the person who wrote those questions was referring to your husband." Emily nodded instinctively. "What did he intend by that? Because I do not understand. I assume your husband means to say that he does not care at all if you had an affair in Bali. He simply wants to confirm that you intended to do it. He is stating plainly that your intention to be intimate with this man from Jack is sufficient for him." "Good luck, Mrs. Brown. There are business cards from a couple of reputable divorce lawyers." At the reception desk, Emily left the office within days. She had based her entire defense, her entire learning process on convincing her husband that she had not slept with anyone else, lacking professional experience. She had no idea how deeply offended he was by her dishonesty and simple intentions, frustrated and angry. Emily made her ultimate error. Ignoring the chance to go elsewhere to allow time for a calm decision, she jumped into a taxi and headed home. In her view, the true battle of wills had begun. The competitive instinct. The situation escalated as Jack fired the initial shot, and now it was Emily's turn to respond. The taxi dropped her off at the entrance to her neighborhood. Sitting inside the car across the street, Jack, Daniel, and Larry exchanged sorrowful looks while watching the furious woman head toward what had once been their family home. They felt relieved that they had made all the necessary arrangements the night before. Jack did not want to endure any verbal attacks in front of the children since that would certainly harm their well-being. They finally reached the room they had reserved for Emily. and checked to ensure their phones were switched off. There was no news from Emily until Monday. The faint hope that she had used the time to think clearly still lingered, but it was fragile. That last hope vanished completely late Monday night when Jack received a letter from Sarah condemning his cruel tactic of involving the children against her. The letter mentioned an urgent family court hearing. Her lawyer was arranging to determine temporary custody of Danielle and Larry based on Jack's prior predictions. It also revealed she had scheduled a meeting with a psychologist for the following day and called for a family gathering on Wednesday evening. Over the weekend, Emily reflected deeply and, as usual, devised a plan she believed covered all aspects. First, she wanted to try to save the marriage that Jack seemed to have abandoned. This included seeing a counselor, specifically a female one. Emily enrolled in the program to improve her chances of success, carefully explaining her thoughts to her husband. The second part involved family sessions aimed at clarifying her behavior to the children. The third was, of course, the court proceedings designed to ensure she would have the upper hand if the worst were to occur. Emily was already waiting in the counselor's office when Jack arrived, just in time for the Tuesday appointment. Jack immediately took a liking to the woman in her 40s dressed in a style reminiscent of the 1960s. The chairs were positioned facing the counselor but placed more than an arm's length apart. After the introductions, where Emily was simply Emily and Jack was Mr. Brown, the elderly hippie invited Emily to speak first. She recounted the story of their marriage and then presented the facts as she understood them. She described herself as a devoted wife and mother, until for some unexplained reason she slipped up, deceived her family, and went on a date with another man. There was no physical intimacy, as Jack's own observations confirmed, but the intention was there. Upon leaving, Emily was shocked to discover that her credit cards had been canceled. She expressed remorse for her actions and sincerely wished to just put the incident behind her and move forward with her marriage to Jack. The counselor then turned to Jack. First, I want to say that I speak not just for myself, but also for our children. Their main grievance is that their mother lied to them, took 2 weeks off from her annual 6-month vacation to go away alone, and left her phone number unreachable in case of an emergency, he said. Honestly, I did not hire anyone to spy on Emily in Bali. This was unexpected for Emily since it was the last thing she would imagine. She could not believe it was real. Actually, I did not want to accept that she could be cheating until our youngest daughter hacked into Emily's email account and found evidence of the plans she and her lover had made secretly. For the record, I was advised to cancel my credit cards after my eldest daughter discovered that my wife was controlling the entire family budget so completely that I was left powerless. Once again, Emily was shocked she had not realized that her precautions had been uncovered, nor did she consider how her actions would be perceived. The fact that both of her daughters were actively working against her only made her situation worse. As for what my wife expects to gain from all this, excuse me for not trusting a single word she says anymore. The anger in his voice finally showed Emily just how hurt her husband was because of what she had done. Before she could say anything, the counselor turned to Jack and asked what he hoped to achieve with these sessions. I want to understand why my wife thought it was acceptable to deceive her family and make arrangements to be with another man. At this moment, Jack and Emily's marriage still had a chance to be fixed. Everything shifted in a heartbeat, but the cause was not the husband or the wife, but the counselor when she whispered almost inaudibly. Dinosaur Dave believed that Emily had orchestrated the entire situation to speed up the divorce process and had deliberately selected a counselor who would reduce any chances of reconciliation. He snapped, saying he had heard of such counselors before and felt it was completely wrong. Without another word, he stormed out of the room. Emily, who still had a slim chance to avoid disaster if she had chased after Dave and apologized, instead took her frustration out on the counselor. By the time she finished criticizing, Dave had already disappeared. The counselor apologized and convinced Emily to attend a solo session the following week. Later, Emily expressed regret for her inappropriate actions and also participated in an individual session herself. This marked the third mandatory meeting, at the end of which a decision was to be made whether to continue or terminate their efforts. The next day, the family gathering did not go any better for Emily as she simply could not grasp the situation. Trust, once broken, becomes a mere footnote in history, barely noticed like the tusk of a woolly mammoth. Emily had invited everyone over for dinner before the meeting, but Megan reminded her that her cooking skills were lacking and that everyone would arrive exactly at 7:30 in the evening. When they entered, Emily attempted to greet everyone warmly with hugs, but they responded with coldness. Emily made the unfortunate error of sitting down last. By the time she's settled, she was alone, facing 4 stairs from the couch. She tried to persuade her best friend Sarah to move closer, but the atmosphere remained distant and strained. Emily tried once more to reach his side but failed again. Feeling let down, she began her rehearsed speech, which included a bit of apology and many statements like, "I did not really do anything," along with numerous excuses. She felt undervalued both as a woman and the primary provider for the family. Her husband's attention had become expected and ordinary, making her yearn for the kind of attention single women often took for granted. Her self-esteem started to fade as she felt less attractive. When a younger man began to show interest in her, she gave in to his charm. During the talk, Emily attempted to concentrate on Daniel and Larry but struggled to meet Jack's eyes. Meanwhile, Megan was scribbling notes in her notebook, her crossed legs showing signs of impatience. Eventually, the silence from those whom Emily nicknamed the opposition bench quieted her down too. Megan broke the silence, saying, "Damn, Mom, you have disappointed me again. Why is it on the cliché test? I can only give you 85%. If you had said no one would be hurt if they never knew, I could have given you 100%. No one knew." Emily blushed, unsure if it was from anger or the realization that she had meant to say that but forgot. Regardless, she understood she would not receive sympathy from her children as long as Jack held their hearts and minds. "Jack, come to the kitchen now, please," she called. As soon as they were alone behind the shut door, Emily pounced on him, hissing with clenched teeth, "Does it really have to be this way, Jack? I will break you until you come crawling back." Dave looked at her with sadness because he understood that she was still trapped by her own nature. "No, it does not have to be like this at all if you simply did what is right and decent to do," he said. "The result does not have to be certain if you let go of the foolish choices you have made. I will be your unbiased advisor and we will proceed together. I will see you in court," he declared firmly. Dave moved into a rented house with 3 bedrooms, clearly aware that this situation would not resolve quickly. He was also informed that the preliminary custody hearing for Danielle and Larry was set for the following Tuesday. Upon discovering the name of the family court judge assigned to his case, he contacted Jack. Jack told him he had been fortunate to get the same judge who had never granted custody to his father before. Dave refused Jack's offer to represent him, but requested a meeting over the weekend to understand the procedures and clarify what he could and could not say. He planned to use the system properly this time before returning to his usual methods. He was determined to protect the emotional health of his children. The weekend was spent making improvements to the rental home. Dave gathered the children around the table and candidly described how the house would look soon and what his long-term goals were. The kids became excited and eagerly joined in the planning. Together they searched online for everything they would need to make the house a true home. On Tuesday, Emily's lawyer was somewhat taken aback to discover that Jack planned to represent himself. He understood how uncomfortable Emily would feel if questioned by her own husband. The court session started late that day, allowing only administrative issues to be addressed until the end. Afterward, everyone had to return the next day. Overnight, several local journalists got wind of the story. The next day, the slow-paced Newsweek opened with Emily's attorney reviewing property ownership, comparative incomes, and other relevant matters. Jack then began his questioning. Emily appeared noticeably anxious, a fact that did not escape the reporter's attention. Jack started calmly, saying, "I'm the one who built our family home with my own hands," Emily replied. "Yes, you did, but I was busy working and earning the majority of our income." Jack asked, "Did you return to work within 2 months after any of the children were born?" She confirmed that she had. Then he inquired, "Who prepared our children's breakfasts, packed their school lunches, and cooked dinners?" Emily said, "You. I worked long hours." Jack suggested, "Would you say I was the primary caregiver?" Emily answered, "Probably." He accused her of lying recently to both him and the children by going to Bali for 2 weeks specifically to have an affair. Then the attorney objected, explaining to the judge that adultery is no longer considered in custody decisions here. Jack responded, "I'm not concerned about the affair itself, Your Honor. I want to highlight my wife's character and her belief that she is a suitable mother." The objection was overruled. Jack continued, "Well, I traveled to Bali because I needed a break, and it just so happened that I traveled with a male colleague from my workplace." "Yes, when you left for Bali after deceiving your family, did you leave a letter behind for your husband to discover?" Then Jack read the entire letter. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed two reporters flashing their cameras wildly. Emily did not need to respond. Her furious glare said it all. It was humiliating. Is it true that after you came back from your deceitful trip, you never once tried to make amends with your husband and family for your lies and obviously inappropriate motives? Again, the firm response was silence. Your Honor, your verdict seems straightforward. I have been the main caregiver for my young children and have always taken on that role. They should be placed in my custody, along with the house I constructed and where they have spent most of their lives. I have never been unfaithful to my wife or told her or the kids any serious harmful untruths, and I demand she withdraws her accusations. Her actions have proven she is incapable of properly influencing our children. Jack took his seat, facing away from Emily, whose angry eyes seemed to try to pierce the back of his head. The judge was fully attentive and delivered her judgment right away. Essentially, countless studies have shown that in divorce cases, children generally fare better living with their mother. Following that, the judge ruled that temporary custody and residence in the family home would be granted to Emily. Emily smiled with a sense of triumph while Jack remained composed. This was precisely what he had anticipated following his discussion with JN. He rose and addressed the court respectfully. Your Honor, I wish to draw attention to your own rulings in Harper versus Harper-Smith versus Smith-Fawn versus Fulton, and several others too numerous to list where custody was granted to the primary caregiver. Receiving no reply from the judge, Jack went on to reference 3 scientific studies challenging the idea that children always fare better with their mother. What exactly are you implying, Mr. Brown? Inquired the judge. I am curious, Your Honor. Can a man with male anatomy succeed in your courtroom? The judge fixed Jack with a penetrating gaze, and he met it without flinching. Then she pronounced the case closed and set the date for the next hearing. Journalists were hurriedly taking notes. Jack approached and handed them copies of Emily's letter before leaving without a backward glance. Emily's attorney came over to congratulate her. However, she was not in the mood for celebration. Jack's statement about her complete lack of remorse for her deeds had hit a nerve. Sadly, her instinct to prevail in every battle made it impossible for her to concede once caught. Blaming the collapse of his marriage on Emily's self-satisfied expression, Jack tallied those who had offended his sense of fairness and required enlightenment. There were 3 individuals and strategies were already underway. He had consulted Sarah to get another perspective and implemented the adjustments she had suggested. One of her proposals was actually much better than what he had originally imagined. After returning home, he used a connection in the federal government to send a letter to the president of the federal court explaining his claims of partiality against a particular judge. He then waited for Danielle and Larry to get back from school. They willingly agreed to his request to stay with their mother for at least the next 2 nights. At that point, he gave them the tools for the second phase of his plan. 2 newspaper articles appeared the following day, portraying both Emily and the judge in an unfavorable light. Dave clipped these articles and forwarded them to a friend of a friend of a friend. On Wednesday afternoon, Emily fortunately arrived home on schedule. Danielle and Larry were there, but they made it obvious this was a silent protest. When she tried to question them, they answered with the barest words possible. She had to remind them to prepare their school lunches for the next day. Since it had been so long since she last did this, it had slipped her mind. Finding nothing appropriate in the kitchen cupboards, she ultimately gave them money to buy food from the school canteen. She got home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to change for her counseling session scheduled for 5 o'clock. During the session, she explained the conditions under which she would consider taking Dave back. This part of the discussion took up half the time. The counselor spent the remainder reviewing the history of their marriage. Emily admitted to 2 inappropriate relationships before Jack, one involving a coworker. Emily spoke with a neighbor as well, emphasizing that among all 3 friends, no actual sexual relations had occurred. She did not mention that in the first 2 situations, it was not by her own choice. She showed genuine confusion about why Jack was so upset by what she did since nothing inappropriate took place. The counselor promised to discuss the terms with her husband, but warned that reconciliation seemed unlikely because Jack's objections appeared to be based more on mistrust and motives than on actual events. The meeting with Jack the following day was brief, curt, and somewhat intimidating. When asked what he hoped to achieve from the session, Jack presented only 2 options. Either he wanted a referral to a different counselor who would not openly accept female infidelity, or he wanted her to acknowledge that the marriage was beyond repair. Concerned that her previous statement might damage her professional reputation, the counselor promptly informed the relevant authorities that the marriage had ended. She understood another complaint against her could end her career. When Jack returned home, Megan and Larry were already settled inside. A police officer knocked, informing him that he had violated a family court order. He explained that it was not him, but his children who were involved, and that removing them by force would be considered assault. The officer asked the children to come with him, but they refused. He left to make further arrangements. No sooner had Jack returned than Emily rushed into the house shouting at David. She said, "I have already told you it does not have to end like this. Just inform Danielle and Larry to come with me. Give me the house and I will be fair with visitation rights and division of assets." David calmly replied, "Emily, please leave my space. I refuse to force the children into a situation they do not want, and one that would disturb their sense of morals." David reminded her, "We have known each other for quite a while. You know who I am. I am not a bad person." Emily responded, "That is exactly the issue, David. I do not even recognize you anymore. The woman I married would never have done what you did." Jack added, "She certainly would not have shown no remorse and would have told our counselor to give me an ultimatum. Tolerate your actions or lose everything I cherish." During the counseling yesterday, David found out that before Jack, Emily had attempted relationships with 2 other men. He asked, "Tell me, Emily, what did I do to deserve the way you treated me? And what are you planning to do now?" The realization that the counselor had abandoned her surprised Emily. Feelings of guilt stopped her from lashing out at David. However, all of Emily's anger shifted towards the counselor, whom she bitterly blamed. She was angry because the counselor was not allowed to disclose certain details. David did not respond to this either directly or indirectly. Furious, Emily stormed out. Meanwhile, David erased the tape recorder that Danielle had hidden in Emily's purse beforehand. The counseling session concluded, and he felt certain that justice would prevail. He believed that fairness was on its way to the counselor, and he was not mistaken. 3 days later, the counselor was informed that her services were no longer necessary. There was one drawback. Children's services showed up on Saturday morning, but left feeling frustrated when it became clear that the children would not cooperate unless forced to leave against their will. They shouted and resisted, making the mistake of trying to reason in an intensely emotional situation, said Chief Officer Larry. "The courts have ruled it is preferable for you to live with your mother, so the courts were mistaken. Neither Danielle nor I want to live with someone deceitful who caused harm to our father." That was the final word. Emily spent the following week attempting to win back all 3 children's trust and loyalty. Eventually, they refused to answer her calls, quickly deleting her emails and phone messages. She tried to reach out to Jack, but once he realized that the conversation did not include an apology, he ended it. Giving up, he hired John to represent him in the divorce proceedings. He also met with Sarah's supervisor to verify the advice she had provided. At the end of the next week, he learned through Sarah that Emily was going on another work trip for the entire week ahead. Taking advantage of this, he took a week off from work and did an outstanding job supporting the children, both after school and throughout working hours. When Emily returned home the following Friday, she discovered the full extent of what had been going on during her absence. Emily pulled into the driveway and admired the view. Before her stretched a beautifully maintained lot with a suspended pool visible. A brick garage stood as well. The only thing missing was her stunning, award-winning house. Her foldable palace had been taken apart, and in its place there was a single, severely damaged building. It seemed this structure had been purchased at an insurance write-off auction after it was ruined during transportation. A few days later, she unlocked the door and saw that Jack had made an effort to change the locks. All of her clothes, some furniture, and personal belongings were still inside. She felt torn, caught between anger and profound sorrow. For a moment, the sadness overwhelmed her, and she fell to the floor right by the entrance. There, she noticed a copy of the title deeds. She read through the documents, which listed the land and buildings at the specified address. Then she realized she had been cleverly deceived. The land truly belonged to her, and a home was there after all. She called her lawyer to verify that nothing could now be altered about the house. Later, after some reflection, she contacted her financial advisor to amend the only financial deal remaining that could still be changed. This involved a trust into which a piece of undeveloped land had been transferred. She was informed that Megan had already used her rights and moved all documents into her own name. Emily's final act before losing her composure was to blame her own pride, having expected all three children to support her. At that moment, she understood that the rest of her world was slipping away. The family had turned against her, Jack for taking her house, the children for not standing by her side. She was on the verge of facing the full weight of her wrongdoings, yet sadly, her sorrow shifted into fury once more. Just before everything clicked into place, she sent a message to all three kids asking, "Do you truly despise me that much?" A solitary response arrived, "We do not hate you. You always understood that I would do all that was needed to shield our family. It just pains me that you forced me to guard them from you," signed Jack. Emily packed up her belongings and then checked into a nearby motel. On the way, she drove through Megan's neighborhood to ensure that the pieces of her former home were neatly arranged and ready to be reassembled and connected on Monday. Later that day at work, she received Jack's divorce petition. He expressed regret for the necessity, but said he did not know where else she could stay. Emily spent the following hour trying to decipher the terms of the agreement that initially appeared favorable. It granted her full ownership of the property they had acquired together, which, considering most other assets were secured, accounted for the largest share. However, several expenses had to be subtracted from the property's value. These included the cost of airfare and a hotel stay in Bali. As Jack claimed, these were sums Emily had taken from their marriage. Also removed were divorce-related fees and other charges. The price of uncovering her financial deception included half of the anticipated interest on the funds placed in a trust for the following timeframes of 2 and 5 years, respectively. She proposed that the children be entrusted to the custody of whichever parent they preferred in order to maintain harmony. Should either Danielle or Larry select the other parent, Larry as the younger child would make the final choice. Preserving family unity was of utmost importance. Emily contacted her financial advisor to inquire about the possibility of canceling the two trusts established in the children's names, but was told it was impossible. The advisor had fulfilled his duties effectively. Through a divorce attorney, she attempted to appoint a different counselor. However, since the first counselor had already agreed to the marriage, this could not be done without Jack's approval. When she demanded such approval through her lawyer, Jack reminded her that he had previously suggested an alternative counselor weeks earlier but was declined. Now that Emily appeared to be driven solely by the fear of her impending downfall, it was too late. Emily signed the agreement understanding that it was the best offer she would obtain. With the family court likely awarding her custody of Danielle and Larry, she would gain access to the assets held in trust for the two minors as their legal guardian. This meant she would only forfeit the value of the second piece of land. Once all details were finalized, the divorce proceeded swiftly. Her lawyer assured her that they would be assigned the same family court judge because they were now under her authority, and she had gained a reputation for being highly partial. The lawyer often advised his male clients facing her to abandon their efforts and save their funds, knowing her vindictive scheme was unfolding perfectly and that Jack would end up impoverished. Emily felt at ease, pondering whether Jack's pride would prevent him from returning humbly, in which case she would show generosity but on certain terms, or if he would accept defeat. Confident once more, Emily entered the courtroom a month later. She was greeted by a tense lawyer who pointed out a woman in a business suit sitting in the front row of the public gallery. "You see that woman? I studied law with her. I hear she now works in the office of the chief federal judge. Something strange is happening and it worries me," he said nervously, and his unease rubbed off on Emily. The judge started the hearing by announcing it would be her final case as she planned to take early retirement, though her demeanor suggested she was unhappy about this. Then the lawyers began their arguments. Emily objected to Jack's request that she bear all the legal expenses. He proposed that she cover Jack's costs while he would pay hers. Megan disagreed, highlighting that he was working pro bono for Jack. From that moment, the situation worsened. Megan honestly described the couple and their qualities as guardians. There was little Emily's lawyer could do. He seemed to regret trusting the judge's process and not gathering abundant factual proof. The trial took up the entire morning and was evidently one-sided. The judge, frequently making rulings, glanced at the woman dressed in costume seated among the spectators and spoke as if her words were sharp and difficult to utter. She stated that the case's facts were straightforward and declared that Jack, as the main guardian, had been granted custody. She even praised him for the generous proposal he had made to Emily concerning the division of assets, and expressed hope that he could nurture the children well with the portion he had agreed upon. Throughout, there was a noticeable lack of sincerity in her tone. Emily was so stunned that she failed to notice the final strike of the judge's hammer. Returning to her solitary one-room apartment, she felt as though she had been hit by a bus. Despite the emotional turmoil, she could not allow herself to wallow in self-pity because she had a property issue to settle. Anticipating a financial decision, she decided to put her old home up for sale. The neighborhood was unpleasant and steep, fitting only for a very particular kind of house, and the asking price she had set was very low. Unless someone recreated her former home exactly, even the landscaping, which had once been splendid due to Jack's clever design, would have to be forsaken. This afternoon was the time for the settlement, and she had hoped to personally hand over the title deeds to the new owners, wishing they would enjoy the house as much as she had. However, she felt disappointed when the man present revealed that he was merely an agent representing the buyers. They could arrive soon if she wished. Suddenly, Emily spotted David's car passing by. 4 trucks carrying her old house appeared, with a crane following behind. At that moment, she chose to leave. Once at her new home, she glanced at the small check in her hand, the only compensation she had received from the train accident that had shattered her thriving life. Still feeling a bit overwhelmed, she opened a journal a friend had suggested for managing her emotions. Using a red felt-tip pen, she boldly wrote in large letters, "If you get an itch, go to a pharmacy. If you make a mistake, own up to it quickly." You are far smarter than you realize. Approximately 2 months after she was expected, Emily decided to pay a humble visit. She brought a bottle of champagne to celebrate the homeowner's new beginning. When she arrived, the story ended. What do you think, dear viewer? Perhaps a bit of valuable advice will come in handy. When 2 individuals ask a third party to resolve a conflict, whether it is a counselor, a lawyer with good intentions, or a helpful neighbor, they surrender control over their own fate. Whenever possible, handle your problems independently and always treat those you care about with respect and kindness. I am unsure if this saying fits Australia, but keep in mind this wise caution. Watch your steps carefully, because the ones you offend today might be the very people you have to rely on tomorrow. Since this was not a continuation of an American tale, it was actually written in Australian English, or Streen, as locals call it, for those unwilling to search further. When you look up unfamiliar words in an Australian dictionary, I will tell you that a stream is simply a stream, and to go to the scrub means to leave the city. Australians are a casual and irreverent people who do not automatically honor authority. This reality is often exaggerated by our politicians who take themselves far too seriously. In fact, some of our most well-known leaders have been among our biggest jokers. Back in the 1970s, we had a prime minister named G.A. pronounced Gough Whitlam. During an interview, he was confronted by an aggressive reporter demanding he clarify his stance on the abortion issue. Like many politicians, Gough preferred to keep his personal views on this sensitive subject private, but when she persisted, he finally lost patience and shared his opinion live on air. "Madam, I support abortion, and in your case, I would make it retrospective." His approval ratings then surged by 20 points. "I apologize for not being present, but I am currently serving time in prison. I enjoy reading stories about past heroes, and recently, I came across a tale about a young Dutch boy who saved everyone by placing his finger in a leaking dam. I will spare you the full details, but I was so inspired that I tried to do the same myself. With good behavior, I expect to be released in approximately 6 months. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.